Well, hello there! Welcome to my top 10 horror movies of 2018 list. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed today's video, please do leave it a like and subscribe if you want to help support me and my channel. So let's talk about some horror movies. I thought 2018 wasn't the greatest year for horror movies, but you know, so many people I see online these days say there aren't any good horror movies anymore. No one ever makes good horror films anymore. And that's simply not true at all. You just have to look. You can't expect to find great horror movies from mainstream Hollywood. You can't expect to go see the new Ouija film and expect it to be good. Actually, I say that, but Origins of Evil wasn't that bad at all compared to the first one. You have to search. You have to look into indie films. You have to look into maybe foreign films, and you will find good movies. I promise you. Now, I have some honourable mentions before we get into the main list. First of all, we have Overlord. This was a very interesting film by J.J. Abrams. It was a kind of a unique idea indeed, very unique idea. The concept was fine, the premise was fine. It was about some soldiers trying to destroy a German radio tower, but then they find that they had this lab underneath and all of these bizarre goings on involving zombie type creatures, but they're not actually zombies. I won't spoil it for you though. This film had some fantastic creature effects and had some really weird, gruesome body horror moments, and I liked it a lot because of that, but it really fell flat in terms of relatable characters and that kind of thing. We also have Cam. Cam is an interesting little film about a world where cam girls are incredibly popular and they make lots of money and make lots of views online. It had some interesting social commentary about how far we're willing to go for recognition and likes and things like that on the internet. We also have The Devil's Doorway, which is an interesting film about the hypocrisy of Catholic Christianity. About the Magdalene laundries, I think that's what they're called, where they would keep mentally ill girls and patients and treat them like absolute crap and get them to do a lot of work. Very, very interesting, but then it kind of just went into standard horror tropes for the most part of the film. It could have been really great. It was found footage, but done in a really interesting way with a very old style to it. So, let's get on to the main top 10 now, otherwise this will be another half an hour video. Right, up at number 10 we have Apostle, which was directed by Gareth Evans. This is an interesting period piece, essentially The Wicker Man, but in a different kind of context, and I quite enjoyed it. The year is 1905. Thomas Richardson travels to a remote island to rescue his sister after she's kidnapped by a mysterious religious cult demanding a ransom for her safe return. It soon becomes clear that the cult will regret the day it baited this man as he digs deeper and deeper into the secrets and lies upon which the commune is built. Yeah, I enjoyed this film. I thought it was pretty good. You have Dan Stevens playing Thomas Richardson. You guys might recognize him from Legion. He's a pretty damn good actor. I do actually really like him. This film has some really interesting kind of mystery through lines to it. There's a whole bizarre cult. I find that kind of element really interesting. I really liked it. I think what really held this back for me was how lacking in gruesome goriness it was, because it was obviously doing things. There were torture scenes and that kind of stuff which could have been a lot more graphic in my opinion, and I think that would have made us feel a lot more for these characters. Good characters, good set design, but there were just a few little elements that were holding it back for me. I think this got quite a lot of harsh reviews, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as a lot of reviewers have been saying it is. Next up, at number 9, we have Unsane, directed by Steven Soderbergh and written by Jonathan Bernstein and James Greer. I really like Steven Soderbergh. I think he does some great stuff, a very, very talented director. This whole film was directed on an iPhone, so it gave it a very gritty, realistic feel, and obviously if you're using an iPhone, you can put the camera in a lot of places you usually wouldn't be able to. This is basically the story of a girl who is stalked by this guy and can't let go of the feeling that she's being followed. So she admits herself into this mental hospital, but then they keep her there against her own will with some sneaky documents you have to sign saying that you've voluntarily admitted yourself and that kind of thing. It's got some really interesting commentary on modern day healthcare, but towards the end, when it gets into the stalker kind of stuff and becomes more of a standard horror film, I don't like it nearly as much. I think at the start, performance from our lead girl was good, and I grew attached to her, but then it just went off into too much of a standard horror direction, and this happens quite a lot recently. We had Velvet Buzzsaw, which I think was pretty good for the start of the film, but then it goes off into just standard horror tropes and it becomes less of a good thing. So at number 8 we have Halloween, the 2018 version, directed by David Gordon Green and written by Jeff Fradley and Danny McBride. Now this film has such a split opinion on it. There are people really backing this and really saying it's fantastic, and then there are people saying that it's really not that good. I'm really down the middle on this one. I think in terms of what it's done wrong, I think it was too tame, far too tame. A lot of the deaths were pretty basic, some of them were done off screen, and I know this is clearly going for a bit more of a realistic, gritty feel to some of the other more wacky Halloween entries, but I think that was holding it back a little bit. Aside from that though, when the kills do happen and then you see the bodies, they're often in these really gruesome positions, and you think, well, how did Mike Myers manage to do this? I really like Mike Myers in this. I find him very intimidating. He's just a non-stop killing machine. I think they've done him justice, definitely. I loved the opening scene at the sanitarium. I thought that was fantastic when he gets the mask out. I thought that was really a great way to introduce everything. I loved the music. I thought it was really good. It mixed kind of the old classic theme tune with some more modern techie kind of sounds, and I liked that. I thought some of the cinematography was genuinely impressive. There were quite a few long single takes that must have been quite difficult to get right, especially when you have kills involved. So yeah, for those reasons, I liked it, but I didn't like it nearly as much as a lot of other horror films that came out this year. Next up we have The Endless. This is a film by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. These two guys actually play the two lead roles as well. I have done a review of this on my channel if you wanted to check that out. I also review Cam in the same video. As kids, they escaped a UFO death cult. Now two adult brothers seek answers after an old videotape surfaces and brings them back to where they began. So the two brothers are split on their opinions. One of them says, you don't remember it how it was, this is a terrible cult, they do horrible things, whilst the other brother says, well, look at our lives now, we live in a tiny little flat doing horrible jobs, when back then we were happy and we had anything we could ever want. So they end up going back to this cult, and from there on, my god, this film is absolutely crazy. Now, the things that let this film down are definitely, I mean, the two lead guys, because they're not actors, they're, writers and directors, I don't think they were really ready to take on these roles and become the relatable, likable people we want, but I think they did a fine enough job. I think they did an okay job. What made this movie great for me is how bizarre it gets. It goes into a lot of weird multi-dimensional time looping kind of concepts, and I really like that. You at first think, is there anything to this cult? Is there anything more than what's on the surface? And it's one of those films where you feel so happy when you find out that yes, there is some interesting stuff going on here. So I really liked it for that. It's a low budget, small project, but I think some of the effects were genuinely pretty damn good. They obviously could have been a lot better. I think they wanted to go for this really grand, weird sci-fi kind of feel, but I don't think they could really live up to what their expectations were, but I think for what they had, they did a pretty damn good job. Next up at number 6, we have Ghost Stories. Skeptical Professor Philip Goodman embarks on a trip to the terrifying after being given a file with details of 3 unexplained cases of apparitions. I don't even know if they wrote that sentence properly. This is on IMDb. Anyway, this is directed by Jeremy Dyson and Andy Nyman. This is great, a really good British horror film. I absolutely love it. It's a kind of anthology film, but not in the way that VHS is an anthology, where they're very disconnected stories that have kind of an outer concept to loop them together. This one is a guy investigating 3 different cases, so you go into the details of these each of these cases, and then the investigation is done. I adore this film. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It has some crazy twists towards the end that you just wouldn't expect to see. It has a very fantastic British feel to it. It's got a lot of humour and comedy in it, and I like that. Obviously, being an anthology, you have these separate stories that each have their own unique kind of vibe and feeling to them, and it's great. It's really great. It takes you in such bizarre different directions. We have Andy Nyman playing Professor Goodman, the lead role. We have Martin Freeman. We have Alex Lawther, that you might recognise from Black Mirror, Shut Up and Dance, I think the episode's called. He plays a very unique, weird, quirky character. This film is genuinely pretty damn scary as well. It has some really scary moments. The films I've talked about so far haven't been too scary, but this film definitely has its moments. It has a lot of concepts of isolation, especially in the first story. You have concepts of isolation, feeling alone. You have concepts of paranoia, and I adored it. I thought it was really good. It also looks into people that are skeptical and people that are manipulating people to thinking there's more to these ghost stories than there are. I really think you guys should check this one out if it sounds like something that's up your street. It's really brilliant. Next up at number 5, we have A Quiet Place by John Krasinski. This is quite a delightful film. It's incredibly well crafted, it's beautifully inventive, and I really do like it. There are a lot of people out there that have problems with this movie, and I'll talk about some of my problems with it, but they are tiny, minor little issues. In a post-apocalyptic world, a family is forced to live in silence while hiding from monsters that have ultra-sensitive hearing. Now, there's lots of films that do similar ideas to this. There have been many post-apocalyptic films recently, and in this film there's very little explanation about the world, how everything started and what happened, and sometimes I'd have a problem with that, but in this film I really don't, because it actually connects you more to the family at play here. It connects you more to them because you're learning things along with the main family. Now, one of the big aspects of this film that I like is the family dynamic and how much you start caring for these characters. Basically, these monsters are hunting everyone. They are super sensitive to hearing, so if they hear you, they will come for you. Now, one of the girls is deaf or incredibly hard of hearing, I can't remember, so the family would have had to learn sign language, so they already know sign language, so that makes sense. It's little details like that that I really like. It shows that I really thought about everything in this film. When it comes to the monsters, often you'll end up being disappointed, especially with a low budget indie film like this, but no, the monsters are so well designed, and the CGI is actually pretty damn fantastic. This is one of the most tense films I've ever seen, and what makes it so tense is how much you care for these characters and how much you relate to them. You grow attached to them, so therefore when they're in peril, really feel for them. Some of the child actors in this are really good. Unfortunately, when you hear some of them talk, they're not so good anymore, but I love it. I think there's some really emotional scenes in this film, and I really do like the way you learn everything with them. I love the design of the place that they live. I love the way they set everything up. They really thought about every last little detail. And yeah, as I say, very tense film, very gripping, tense film, has some fantastic moments. This whole film is done without dialogue or speech, and I think that makes it all the more terrifying. So if you haven't seen this, which would be surprising, definitely go check it out. It's utterly fantastic. Number 4, we have Annihilation by Alex Garland, who also created the film Ex Machina. This is quite a special film indeed. A biologist signs up for a dangerous secret expedition into a mysterious zone where the laws of nature don't apply. So there was a comet struck this lighthouse, and from there this huge kind of dome appeared, and inside this dome, as I just said, the laws of nature are completely different. Nothing is quite as it seems. This is cosmic horror at its finest. It's based on a book by Jeff Vandermeer, I believe. We have Natalie Portman in the main role. She might be the problem I have with this film the most. I don't like Natalie Portman at all. I think she's terrible. She's absolute garbage. So yeah, that's easily my biggest problem. If this was a different actor in this role, then we could have had something even more special. But the things that make this film for me is the absolutely fascinating, bizarre concepts at play. The music is so good. It's this wonderful synthy sci-fi kind of sound, and it's just brilliant. We have some of the most weird scenes in this film, some really bizarre creatures. There's this bear that replicates the sound of the last thing it killed, so it sort of mimics how it sounded as it was dying, and that is just terrifying in itself. And you guys might be thinking of one of the SCPs that also does that. But yeah, I adored this film. I thought it was brilliant. It led up and it built up and built up and built up to this final moment where the last scene of this film is absolutely incredible. It is one of the most tense, bizarre, just amazing final moments to a film I've seen in a long time. Now, this film isn't that scary, but it does have its moments, especially with that bear creature. But it's more about, I don't know, cosmic horror than anything. So check out this film if you haven't seen it, guys. It's just fantastic. We're really getting up there now. Just to let you know, like, this top 5, there's not a lot differing them in how much I like them. Next up at number 3, we have Mandy by Panos Cosmatos, a very fitting name for the kind of cosmic feel that this film has. The enchanted lives of a couple in a secluded forest are brutally shattered by a nightmarish hippie cult and their demon biker henchmen, propelling a man into a spiraling, surreal rampage of vengeance. So this is a Nicolas Cage film, and good God, it just reminds you that Nicolas Cage is genuinely a fantastic actor. He can do such a good job, and he really elevated this film, in my opinion. Now, why is this film at number 3 on my top 10 horror films of 2018? Because it's just crazy. It's just amazing. It's so vibrant and colourful, and it has some of the most beautifully inventive cinematography I've seen in a long time. The way colour is shown in this film is just incredible. Through the start of the film, when it's showing these guys and their relationship develop, there's a lot of green, there's a lot of serene moments, but towards the end of the film it gets red and it gets dark, and there's a huge contrast and big shadows. It's such a wacky film. It's set in the 1980s, but you could think that this is set on another planet in the distant future. It's a very odd film, but seriously, if you haven't seen this, just check it out. It has so many cool, crazy moments. The cult is really interesting, but I find the demon biker henchmen so well designed and so intriguing. I'd love to have a film that is purely about them, because they're just so bizarre. They're like these weird BDSM alien creatures. It's just amazing. The cult is interesting as well. One thing, I guess it does take quite a while to get to the kind of revenge sequence of it, The start can be, it goes on for a little bit. This is a 2-hour film. Well, it's not the scariest film in the world, but it's so crazy, so colourful, so vibrant. The music is fantastic. The film opens with Starless by King Crimson, which is one of my favourite prog rock tracks of all time. So if that's any reason to make you think, this is going to be good, isn't it? Then, you know, it's great, and I really recommend you guys check it out. Now, number 2, we have a film that I have actually done a full review on, but I just haven't got it up on the channel yet. This is Suspiria by Luca Guadagnino. The original film was by Dario Argento. This is based on a film of the same name from 1977. Now, I think this film has been getting some harsh reviews from critics that have seen the original film and have been for some reason disappointed that this remake actually had its own feel and vibe to it. It doesn't really make much sense to me. This film is special. Really special. In my opinion, it's easily one of the best films of 2018 and one of the best films I've seen in recent memory. So the original film is incredibly vibrant and colourful. It's very psychedelic, but this film, the cinematography and the colour palette is very washed out. It's very grey, so that's already one difference. This is a very long film at 2.5 hours long. Issues I have with it? Well, there's a political through line. It's like post-war, post-wall Berlin, all the Baader-Meinhof stuff, and it just felt a bit detached from the main storyline. A darkness swells at the centre of a world-renowned dance company, one that will engulf the artistic director, an ambitious young dancer, and a grieving psychotherapist. Some will succumb to the nightmare, others will finally wake up. This is a surreal, bizarre film, and I don't know what critics are saying, because this echoes the feel of a 1977 horror film so well. It has these snap zooms, it has split diameter shots, the cinematography is spot on for the original film. Now, we have Dakota Johnson playing our lead protagonist, right, the lead actor from 50 Shades of Grey, and my god, I may have been hard on her from that film, but she is wonderful in this film. As I say, this is about a dance company, so you would be wondering what the dance is like. The dancing in this film is hypnotic, it's rhythmic, it's tribal, it's brilliant, it's absolutely phenomenal, and Dakota Johnson, well done, absolute top marks for your incredibly hypnotic dancing. She has this presence, she's commanding. I think she does such a wonderful job in this role. We also have Tilda Swinton playing 3 different characters, one of which is an old man that's one of the main characters in this film. Tilda Swinton is bloody brilliant. You can say whatever you like about some of the films she's been in the past, but my god, she's one of the best actors going at the minute, I think, and she does a wonderful job in this film as well. Okay, so it's a horror film. What's the scary... Well, is it scary? It's not so scary as it is disturbing. It is hypnotic, it's disturbing, it's dreamlike, it's so nightmarish. There are some really graphic, disturbing, weird scenes that will leave you thinking about them for a long time after the film. The soundtrack to this film is probably the best soundtrack of 2018 by a long shot. It's by Tom York of Radiohead. Radiohead's potentially my favourite band of all time, but that doesn't create a bias here. Well, it does, but I mean, I would still say this if I didn't like Radiohead. Tom York has such a variation in his music, and that's the same for Radiohead. It's such a consistently great sound, but it changes so much. That's like this film. You have synthy stuff, you have this kind of orchestral stuff, string-based stuff, you have his kind of more chilled out rocky stuff. It's brilliant, bloody brilliant. One thing I really disliked about this film though is that it does that slow motion choppy frame rate bullcrap that I hate. I hate it. Why do they do it? The whole climax of this film is done in that choppy frame rate, and I don't understand it. I have no idea why they decided to do that. It really ruins a lot of this film. I don't understand why anyone ever does that in any film. It's never looked good, and it never will. Baffling choice. Baffling. So, that's Suspiria. Check it out. just bloody go and check it out right now. But number one, you guys have already guessed it, so it's not going to be surprising, is it? We have Hereditary. I love this film. Oh, I love this film so much. Hereditary is the debut film from Ari Aster, and it's just fantastic. We have leading lady Toni Collette pulling off one of the greatest performances of 2018. She has such a variation in her performance, and she's brilliant. You know, she's going completely mad in this film, but you still feel sympathy for her. You still feel for her character because she has such a relatable and real feel to the way she acts. Now, this film, after the family matriarch passes away, a grieving family is haunted by tragic and disturbing occurrences and begin to unravel dark secrets. This film is disturbing, it's shocking, it's horrifying, it's genuinely scary and frightening. It has some really scary moments. I think it deserves all the praise that it's got. This film is a kind of paranormal, supernatural ghost film, but it is done in such a grounded and realistic way with a lot of family drama to it that it feels so real, and that's what makes it so scary and frightening towards the last parts of the film. I really do like those family moments, the drama between the characters. I do like a good horror drama. It's really brilliant. It's an utterly fantastic film. I didn't know what to go for though, Hereditary or Suspiria for my number one spot. But this film, there's just something about it that I can connect with. It has this fantastic cinematography because character Toni Collette plays makes these model dolls houses. They then do cinematography where the establishing shot will be of the doll's house, then it will actually move into the doll's house and there will be the scene playing out in the actual house. It's done in a very clever way and I like that a lot. This film is genuinely scary, especially towards the last part. There are some really creepy, disturbing moments. It's done in a very subtle way. Subtle horror is how you can scare someone, not jump scares every 2 minutes. And again, I don't hate jump scares. I quite enjoy them when they're done right. It's just that very often they're not, and they're obnoxious, and I don't like them. This film has such subtle ways of scaring you, but it's more than just the frightening moments. It's about how much it crawls under your skin and doesn't let go. It's just bloody brilliant. So that is my top 10 horror films of 2018. Let me know down in the comments what you think, whether you like these films, whether you think I missed some out. I'm sure I did. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please do leave it a like and subscribe if you want to help support me and my channel. Patreon, Twitter, links in the description if you want to check either of those out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Take care now.